Nobody warned you that freedom and disappearance look identical in the beginning. Everyone celebrated when you got the remote job. The commute is gone, the office politics are gone, the fluorescent lights and the mandatory birthday cake and the manager hovering 3 feet behind you. All of it, gone. People called it an upgrade. You believed them. What they didn't mention, what nobody mentions, is that the office wasn't just taking things from you, it was also giving you something. A shape to your day, a reason to leave the house, a version of yourself that existed in front of other people. When you removed the office from your life, you didn't just remove the inconvenience, you removed the structure that was quietly holding you together. You didn't notice this immediately. Most people don't. The changes came slowly. They always do. This is how it quietly began.
Phase 1. The permission. The first weeks feel like recovery. You wake up without an alarm, or close to it. You make coffee in your own kitchen. You sit at your desk by 8:47 instead of 9 and nobody says a word. This feels like winning. You tell people you're more productive, and for a while, that's true. The hours you used to spend on the train, you now spend working. The lunch hours eaten at a sad desk replaced by actual meals, real food, hot food. You think about how much of your life the commute was quietly consuming. You run the numbers, 2 hours a day, 10 hours a week, 500 hours a year. You think about what you'll do with those hours. You start a list. Books you'll read, skills you'll build, workouts you'll finally commit to. The list feels real. The possibilities feel real. What you don't see yet is that permission, when given without structure, doesn't create freedom. It creates a vacuum. And vacuums don't stay empty for long. Phase 2. The arrangement. Within a month, a pattern has formed. You didn't design it. It assembled itself from small decisions. Where you put your coffee, which chair you use, what time you check your first message. The apartment has reorganized itself around your presence. There's a spot for work, there's a spot for eating. They're getting closer together. Your partner, if you have one, has adjusted their patterns around yours. The house has 2 people in it now, all day, every day. That requires negotiation, quiet negotiation, the kind that doesn't feel like negotiation. If you live alone, something else is happening. The apartment is becoming the whole world. Everything you need is here. There's no practical reason to leave. So you don't. Not every day anyway. This doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like efficiency. You are saving money. You are saving time. You are, you believe, finally living the way a reasonable person should live. The arrangement feels logical. It is. That's exactly what makes it invisible. Phase 3. The drift. The months blur. Not dramatically, not in a way you'd write in a journal. The blur is quiet. A Tuesday that looks like a Wednesday that looks like a Saturday. You stop knowing what day it is without checking your phone. Not because you're confused, because the day itself carries no distinct texture anymore. Weekdays used to feel different from weekends. There was a shift, a change in atmosphere, in energy, in sound. Now, Monday morning and Sunday afternoon feel like the same temperature. You've been told this is the dream. You're starting to understand why a dream is something that happens when you're asleep. The people still commuting have a Monday. They have a coffee run and a conversation near the elevator. They have something to complain about when they get home. You have silence. You have efficiency. You have the slow, accumulating sense that time is moving through you without leaving a mark. You haven't named this yet. You just know that the days feel thinner. Phase 4. The substitution. At some point, the laptop becomes your primary human interface. This sounds dramatic. It isn't. It just means that the screen is where everything happens now. Work, entertainment, social contact, purchasing. The world is mediated through glass. You still talk to people, but the conversations are scheduled. They have agendas. They end. There are no accidental conversations anymore. You don't bump into anyone. You don't overhear anything. You don't catch someone's eye across a room. The informal texture of human presence, the part that happens in between things, that's gone. What fills the gap is content. A podcast while you make lunch, a video essay while you exercise, a show while you eat. The stimulation never quite stops. You tell yourself you're learning, enriching, staying informed. You don't notice that you found a way to be around imaginary people all day without the discomfort of being around real ones. Real people are unpredictable. Real people require energy. The substitution feels like a preference. It's becoming a pattern. Phase 5, the comfort. You stop going to places you don't have to go. Not all at once, but the threshold for leaving has quietly risen. Last year, you'd go to the coffee shop just to have somewhere to be. This year, that feels like effort. Last year, you'd meet a friend for lunch on a weekday. You had the flexibility. This year, you reschedule, more often than you admit. The apartment has become comfortable in a way that's hard to describe, not physically, emotionally. It has become predictable in the way that's deeply calming. You know every corner, every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the way the light changes across the floor. Nothing here surprises you. Nothing here requires performance. You don't have to be anyone in particular. That relief, the relief of not having to be anyone, is real. But relief and growth are not the same thing, and your body is starting to confuse comfort with safety. The longer comfort lasts, the more ordinary life starts to feel like a threat. Phase 6, the narrowing. Your world is getting smaller, not visibly. You still have the same phone, the same internet, the same theoretical access to everything. But your actual world, the one made of places you go and people you see, and routines that require your physical presence, that world has contracted. There are maybe 3 places you visit regularly now. The grocery store, a coffee shop if it's a good week, maybe a gym, though you've restructured that into home workouts because it's more efficient. Efficiency keeps appearing as a justification. You aren't very efficient now. You are also aware, in moments you don't examine closely, that large groups feel slightly exhausting. Crowds that used to feel neutral now feel like stimulation you need to recover from. You've started thinking of yourself as introverted. Maybe you always were. Or maybe introversion is being slowly trained into you by an environment that never requires you to be otherwise. You don't ask that question. The question is uncomfortable. The apartment is not uncomfortable. You already know which one you'll stay in.
Phase 7, the quiet exchange. Somewhere in the 2nd or 3rd year, you make a trade. You don't know you're making it, you trade ambition for stability. Not dramatically, not with a decision or a realization, the ambition just recedes. It doesn't disappear, it defers. You'll do the project next quarter. You'll start the side business when things settle down. You'll reach out to that contact when you have something ready to show. The deferrals accumulate. What replaces ambition is the work itself, the reliable, repeating work that shows up every Monday and pays every 15th. You have stopped thinking of this job as a phase. It is beginning to feel like the answer. And there's a version of peace in that. A person who has made peace with their situation is calm, functional, grateful even. They are not in pain, but they are also no longer in motion. And the difference between rest and stagnation is almost invisible from the inside. You are resting. You have been resting for a long time. Phase 8. The distance. The relationships from before have thinned. Not ended, thinned. The friends from your previous job, the ones made over bad coffee through proximity, you still have them in your phone. You still react to their posts. But the last time you were in the same room, you'd have to think about it. Relationships sustained entirely by intention are harder to maintain than relationships sustained by proximity. In an office, you didn't have to decide to see people. They were just there. The maintenance happened automatically. Now, seeing someone requires a calendar, a confirmation, a travel time you hadn't budgeted for. It's not that you don't care, you do. But caring without the infrastructure that used to support it requires more energy than you have most days. So the relationships gently contract. You stay close with 2 or 3 people. Everyone else becomes someone you used to know. You tell yourself this is normal. Adults get busy, lives diverge. Both of those things are true, neither of them explains the feeling that you are slowly becoming unknown to other people.
Phase 9. The recognition. At some point, and you'll know when, you sit somewhere and try to account for the time. Not the hours, the years. You try to remember what changed and when and why. You find that you can't place the exact moment because there wasn't one. There was no morning when you decided to stop going out. No day you chose to narrow your world. No moment you agreed to trade motion for stillness. It just happened. And the part that settles uncomfortably is the realization that you were not pushed. You were not trapped. Every door was open. You simply stopped walking through them. Because on the other side was friction, and on this side was comfort. You have every reason to stay comfortable. The work is fine. The apartment is fine. The routine is fine. Fine is a word people use when they've stopped expecting something else. You notice that you haven't expected something else in a long time. You're not sure when that stopped. Phase 10. The settlement. You are, by most measures, doing well. The bills are paid, the work gets done, you are functional and stable and largely unbothered by things that disturb people with more chaotic lives. What you are, quietly, is settled. Not settled in the sense of content, settled in the sense of sediment, the way that things fall to the bottom and stop moving. You know your routines, you know your limits, you know which situations take something from you and which leave you neutral. You've optimized your life for the absence of friction. And here's the quiet truth that takes years to become visible. A life without friction is also a life without resistance. And a life without resistance slowly loses the muscle that movement requires. You could still leave, you know that. There are other jobs, other cities, other ways of existing. The doors are still technically open, but the distance between you and those doors has changed. Not in feet, in everything else. Other people will one day find themselves exactly here. They will have made the same reasonable choices. They will arrive at the same ordinary destination. The cycle continues.